Welcome to our live webcast, Artificial Intelligence, Changing the Landscape of Due Diligence and Monitoring. Thank you for joining us. My name is Lillian, and I will be the operator for the presentation today. Before we get started, I would like to take a moment to acquaint you with a few features of this web event technology. Before we get started, I would like to take a moment to acquaint you with a few features of this web event technology. At any time, you may adjust your audio using any computer volume settings that you may have. On the right-hand side of your screen, you will see the text chat window. There is a large window which holds all of your sent messages and a smaller text box at the bottom where you will type in your questions. To send a question, click in the text box and type your text. When finished, click the send button. All questions that you submit are only seen by today's presenters. Your questions will be responded to in the order in which they were received and will be addressed at the end of the presentation. We are joined today by our speaker, Karen Gray, Senior Supply Management Specialist at Nexis. Karen serves as the expert and central point person for all LexisNexis supply management solutions. She is a resource for benchmarking, market intelligence, strategic category management, and vendor selection, and she focuses on efforts to improve profitability and cash flow, risk mitigation, and operational efficiencies in the area of vendor selection and monitoring. And Pawana Berlacote, Global Product Manager at LexisNexis. Pawana worked at SideQuest, leading and launching products in procurement and spend management. Pawana brings a wealth of experience in the area of user-centric design and agile development and is passionate about solving customer pain points and providing thought leadership to the supply chain management community. Now I will turn the floor over to our speakers.
Hey, thank you. So this is Pawana Berlacote, and I'm going to start this session today, and then I will hand it over to my colleague, Karen Gray. So we're talking today about artificial intelligence, machine learning, and all of this technological, buzzwords that you might be hearing today, and increasingly so in our, enterprise solutions. And it's what does it mean for somebody who's doing a risk monitoring or a due diligence, and how do you leverage these technologies to your benefit? So today we're going to go through a two-part series, and one is just the introduction to the concept. What does artificial intelligence mean to you? What does it mean in terms of your solutions that you buy for risk management? And also, what is a diligence, right? And how do you do a proper diligence using the automation technologies we have, the fuzzies? That way you can uncover a lot of the blind spots. So brief agenda here is you can use a lot of technologies, and I will go through what they mean, a foundational understanding of the technology itself. And also, how do you incorporate that so that whatever you're getting, the results you're getting out of thousands of data set is something that you can actually consume and understand? And how do you go ahead with the monitoring process and automating process so that you have broader coverage in the number of entities and your third parties that you can monitor for risk? So before we get started, I wanted to just get a quick poll question, and you will see a screen pop up with two questions, and if you can take some time to just quickly answer, that would be great. We'll just give you a few seconds here. Okay, I'm seeing the number kind of stabilize for now, so if we could just see the results here. So we can see, right, so the question is it scary when you think of AI, right? And I'm glad to see about just 19% because it is not a scary tool. It's not a sci-fi version, right, of your robots coming and taking over the world. It's actually a tool that you implement to make you, to make you more efficient, to save time, to make a sense of thousands of, we call them unstructured data, and data that doesn't come in the same way. And is it necessary? And it's really good to see, right, that 80% of you actually think that it is necessary, and it is true. A lot of the technologies you're using already has some form of AI in it, all right, and you have seen in your personal lives the explosion of your home, like your smart home tools, like your Google, your Alexa, and you're probably just seeing lots and lots of ads and push to say that all of these things makes your life easier. We can take care of it, and just speak to us, right? So there is a lot of things actually that's going on to produce that consumer product, and also by the same way the enterprise product that actually says what the risk is about. So I'm going to go ahead through the three-step of let's define them. What is artificial intelligence? A lot of the people on the call, and including a lot of our procurement supply chain professionals, don't live in the technology world where they know what an artificial intelligence contains, what is machine learning. At the end, it's a sense of becoming these buzzwords. So I'm going to walk you through what it means. Artificial intelligence, it's the capability of a machine to imitate intelligent human behavior. And it is a combination of many, many, many tools. So when we think of artificial intelligence, it is not a tool that you buy or a technology that you implement. It includes things like machine learning, but machine learning also has other branches. So it's about supervised or is it unsupervised, or does it just self-feed itself? Does it learn over time? There's natural language processing, the way you would talk to your Siri or your Alexa or your Google Home. You talk in a natural language, and you and I will ask the same question but differently, but it still knows to standardize our question and give you the same answers back. So that's around how do you classify it? Does it understand it, that it's a question, right? And how does it then generate text? You might be using chat bots when you're trying to do your online shopping. Something just pops up. Usually it's not a person actually talking to you, but it understands how to have a natural, normal conversation with you. Then we have other things around a lot of explosion of this artificial intelligence tools happening outside of our softwares and our personal devices, in your medicine, in sports, in journalism. So all of those things, being able to even do your voice texting, right? All of that is part of the broader artificial intelligence bucket. And so you see it as a kind of a branch becoming artificial intelligence. I'm going to not cover all of them today. It's going to just bore you, but I'm going to talk about the top tools. So we're going to talk about one of these simple exercise, right, to understand how technology and various technologies are being applied with a simple question. This is a master algorithm, and the way the computer thinks of your question, there's this text here, and for those who speak German, you probably understand what this means, but I don't, right? So I'm going to ask this, and I said, what language is this thing? And I'm going to first ask, is it English? And, this is how your engines are starting to think. So it's the same as you're traveling to a foreign language, foreign country, and you start hearing in languages. Your ears perks up, and you're going to say, what are they speaking? Are they asking me a question? Are they giving me a command? So that's the same way how you would react, a person would react. The machine is going to start reacting. And again, the whole definition of artificial intelligence in my earlier slide is that it's trying to mimic a human behavior. Once I have a language recognizer, is it English or not? It says, nope, it's not English, so I'm going to go through the Google Translate, right? And it's just going to say, what time is it? Oh, so now I know in English, right? So what was actually asked, and that's actually by the German. So once I have the question in English, and I say, okay, so I need to parse what time is it into different structures. So I have a keyword recognizer, and this way of saying it's a type of a question, and the action is I need to go and find an answer, and my objective is to find an answer for time, right? So that's how a lot of this extraction happens. And later on, I'm going to talk a little bit about how does it help you when you're doing your due diligence and monitoring, because it actually understands the context, because it has a way of looking at commands in a specific way. Now I'm going to start looking for data. So that's what the machine is going to do for you. It's going to look at this image. It found the time, and I recognize that it's the image of a time, but it's analog, and I don't know how to tell you this. So I'm going to put this conversion engine in between. I'm going to say this is how the shorthand looks. This is how the longhand looks. Longhand pointing to 5 is 25 minutes. So it's 6:25, right? So it goes through the series of different tools, your language recognizer, the translator, your structure of your sentence, parsing, all of that to give you these answers. And the beauty of this is that it happens in milliseconds, right? So it's not quite a lengthy process of passing back and forth between different tools. But this kind of helps you understand in a way how a simple question with a very simple answer has sometimes hundreds of technology fueling different sections of the work and getting to your eventual answer. So I'm going to go through a little bit of a search process. So if you were to now understand that's how the AI works, and you're going to go and say, how does a search take away from just reading what I actually type into actually understanding what I want to find, right? So it's kind of understanding your intent. So I could type in a keyword, and I could say, show me data, right? And that is such a generic word to put in your engine. But if you're going to start giving more context around, give me big data, give me deep learning, give me things like, it's called, I think, deep learning. Deep learning is also another way of saying big data, and I want to find out more about data. So you have ways of saying, I'm going to put a command, and I'm going to go to this engine. This is part of the machine learning engine that says, I need to first segment the word, I need to understand the syntax, I need to understand, and sometimes the autocomplete features you see is part of the question. It will kind of suggest you to say, since I already saw you asking about big data, do you want to learn something more about learning, right? Or is this something that you're trying to acquire? Is it a technology? Is it a report you're trying to get? So it will kind of give you all of these options you could choose from. And then at the end of it, you go back to the user and say, is this what you meant? That's where the more human-like interaction starts happening. I ask a question, I get some results. Sometimes the machine doesn't know what results to give you, so you will ask you your intent. You clarify, you give the feedback. It can be done automatically. It can also be done by you actually changing or choosing one of the options available. And it will give your answer. But the way the machine learning understands is if that answer was actually valuable to you or not. And this is where if you're thinking of a simple Google tool, it will give you the most relevant results very much in the first, second, third, fourth row. And then the less valuable is not ranked as high. But then if you were to refine and say, I did not mean this, I actually meant something else, it kind of remembers, right, that people tend to search for certain things. There's like for like mapping happening. And over time, the machine learns to prioritize results that were not in 1, 2, 3, but maybe were in the 10th or 11th. When they understand the context, it will start coming up to the top. And this is a continuous effort that happens. It happens with a lot of the enterprise solutions. When you go to a website and it remembers, your preference, your behavior, right? That's kind of a memory piece of it. It remembers what you like. It remembers how you like to see things. And it also can be translated into, it remembers what kind of content you're looking for, what kind of results you actually value. There is some human component to this, so it's not all machines running everything, right? Although you can program the machines to do it. The human element of it happens during the learning to rank stage in the search relevance engine. And then I'm trying to use this cool pointing tool here we have. So in this stage, the machine will remember certain actions made by the user, but the user could also tell the machine not to remember it. There is always a way to override or teach the machine that there are exceptions, and then that certain results are not always, as important as the others. So this whole, this intent, searching for an intent versus a keyword is, one of the things that you will see over time coming to your enterprise solutions as well. And I'm going to go through another piece of technology. And again, we saw tons of them that feeds into AI, and this is the other part of it is fuzzy. And what is it, and how do you use this? It's not a new technology at all. It's been around since 1970s. And this is a way to calculate how likely is it that the results are the same or linked. It's a way of building relationship. So when you look for your maybe social security number, right, you have exact 9 digits you enter, you're going to get a match back, or you're not going to get a match back. That's just, there is no gray line. But if you were to say, I want to know, so let's say you enter the ID, you found matches, you know it's the same. But if you say, I want to find male or female, now there is really no linking because there is no exact answer for that. So you're going to have to compute. So the algorithm goes through this match state, which is, yes, I found it. Non-match state is, I didn't find it. And then this probabilistic, this fuzzy state where I don't know if I found it or not, but I can build links because I have enough of the context to say this is how things are related, right? So that when I'm looking for, and for an example, I'm looking for an ice cream shop, and I'm based out of in Raleigh, it's going to probably give me the ice cream shops in Raleigh area. It's not going to give me something in ice cream shops in New York. And then it's the same way it can tell me, right? So it can do the geographical mapping. It could also be a human intervention where personally you enter Raleigh. Or you could say, I'm not looking for, there are certain words, right, that could be a company name. It could also be a store name, or it could be a generic keyword. But if you were to find, for example, a specific company name, you might enhance it by saying Inc. or LLC at the end of it. That way you're not looking for a generic word. But there is also this way how fuzzy works is that you probably are one of the customers where you have data flowing into your system through 5, 6, up to 10 different systems, and they all come in a different format. Even though they are trying to give you similar data, they don't do the date categorization the same, right? You might have month, date, year. You might also have date, month, year. And just for the machines to understand that they all are date fields and standardize, month, date, year. Things like that can be corrected. It also accounts for a lot of the misspelling or middle names or people with variations in spelling depending on the languages. So it has a way of telling you that here are other possible links that you might want to look at. And this helps you with your kind of a blind spots because you might be just typing in a natural language sense a word or a string of commands, and you expect to get this match state back to you, which is, find the answer that matches exactly what I asked for. But fuzzy helps you look beyond that query and say what else could be there that I did not account for. And there is this example here of a purposely misspelled pumpkin, right? So you have a pumpkin pie misspelled, and then Google is usually say, did you mean pumpkin pie? And it doesn't really, because there is pumpkin, it has a way of saying, and this is where this context comes in place and the use case comes in place. Usually pumpkin is a food item. You're going to put in a food, not a math pie, right, as a suggestion. Usually, so that's a kind of understanding context and how do you prioritize all the way to the very top. Not only has it suggested what I should be looking for, which is actually pumpkin pie, but it has already given me the results, saving me the next step of now go find the result. That's what I meant. Right, so the machines over time are getting smarter, and these are something that you've noticed probably in your personal lives, but it is the same way for when you look about risk monitoring and diligence. A lot of these technologies are already looking for things and that it knows it should look for, and sometimes ignoring some of the queries that is set up. And I'm going to look at a little bit, and I'm going to stop this pointing tool here, real-life examples of AI use. This one, a little bit of a geek myself. I really appreciate how it's being used and the full coverage of AI, and we're just seeing the beginning of it. Right? Sports journalism, weather reporting. These are happening, and all of the things you're reading on your phone or your computers, or even watching the sports stats that comes to the ESPN in the bottom, they are usually done by robots, right? It's not human being typing and giving you the status of your sports, your team's stats. Weather reporting, again, as long as it has data and it knows how a language is spoken, right? So if it's an English reporting versus a French reporting, it can write articles much faster. And there was a survey done where, a lot of the users who read the articles or the sports report written by a robot thought that it was more accurate than the one that was written by the human. But they also thought, right, the downside of it was that it wasn't as personal. So there is always room for improvement. And the other ways they're doing is chatbots. We talked about it a little bit, right? It could be for shopping sites. It could be for any of your educational sites. You're trying to learn something yourself, and then a robot just pops up and is going to help you. And the biggest thing we are seeing here is in the field of medicine, right? So trying to look away from procurement, supply chain, and risk management for a little bit and see how is this technology being used, because it can be purposed to your need, to fit your need. So there is, this way of the phenotypic application. What it does is looks at millions of images of face around the world, and it can look at the pattern of your face, do the mapping of your, the distance of the eye, the nose, the face, the alignment, and how, your ears are close or far, and decide, if you have any genetic disorder, because it has established a pattern, because AI feeds off data. as long as it has enough data content repository, it can make decisions and it can suggest things. So that is one way that they're discovering genetic disorders, by just doing a facial mapping. They're also doing the eye movement tracking, right? How fast and how responsive you are to moving and focusing on an object to detect concussion. And then it also helps with a little bit of brain health, your eye performance, autism. So a lot of these are being tracked today. So it's just a matter of taking something in an iPad and making it move, and then detect the eye movement along with it. There is also speech assessment. So, the normal way for us is to talk to our smart devices, and it will recognize what you're saying. But you can also use the same tool, but for a different result, by saying, depending on my speech pattern, can I assess to see if there is any cognitive impairment or there is signs of Alzheimer's or Parkinson's, because the technology has enough sample of speech by now, and we have had it for decades now, to say that this is a normal speech, and any deviation from the normal leads to certain diseases here. So I find it interesting, right? The same technology, same data set, but different outcomes. So I thought I'll leave you here because Karen is going to take the second half of this session. So Karen, to you.
Tawana, thanks so much. As we go to the next slide here, there is another poll to consider. So thinking about this, has your company begun to allocate resources to incorporate artificial intelligence into its processes? Your choices are yes, AI is not a fad, or no, we don't know where to begin. There's also a follow-up question to say, if not, is it on your 2018 roadmap to incorporate AI into some of your processes? And we'll give you a moment just to respond. All right, so I'm looking at our poll here, and nearly 60% of you that are attending today have been forthcoming enough to say, no, we don't know where to begin, so I'm glad you've stayed on. And the other part of you at least have said no, or maybe you don't know if it is on your 2018 roadmap, with nearly 3/4 of our calling population today. So one of the questions that I get asked most often is, different industries will create or identify ways for artificial intelligence to impact the way their workforce actually works. It may differ on the level of professionalism. It may differ on the task at hand. But more specifically, it turns out that the goal is to increase productivity. A secondary goal might be to increase or improve decision-making and outcomes. So when we start to look at tailored search results and deeper research, we want to ask ourselves, where are we in the process? Do we know where to begin? And the subsequent part of our call today is to outline those steps for you. We had some mention earlier when Tawana was discussing on Siri and its built-in intelligence assistant. Most of you on the phone were using that sort of technology in your space, whether it was through your phone or maybe a newer iPad or a touch device, where it actually recognizes the natural language or the voice patterns and commands that you might give it. On the counterpart of that, Alexa is really a wireless speaker, but it can do so many more things in someone's home. It uses, again, the sound of our voice, albeit it's been laughing. I think I've seen news results that have said it's been laughing out of course or out of direction recently. But you can do things with something like Alexa to create to-do lists. You can create shopping lists. You can shop online. Everybody seems bent on getting instant weather reports, things of that nature. So those are two things that we see that technology evolving into something as simple as your refrigerator, things of that nature in our appliances. We've long seen things like predictive text, whether that was in a texting environment on one of our devices. We could also see that that has been part of our lives in something as simple as a Word document or something as simple as Tawana indicated earlier in searching the web. As we move to the next screen, it is time for our businesses to be smarter. We ask ourselves a question, how can we intelligently integrate machine learning, deep learning algorithms, natural language processing, and more into our own existing products, our services, and the likes of how we engage with our customers. Look around at the digital landscape today. Chatbots are ever present. Virtual assistants are living in our devices, our experiences, and companies like Google, Microsoft, and Salesforce are baking artificial intelligence into their software as part of an intelligence layer that's plugged into an entire technology stack. So AI is reaching an inflection point. There used to be a book out there called The Tipping Point. And so we look at that in the motion of how do we become more efficient, more productive, how do we focus on different tasks that, frankly, a machine or the artificial intelligence could take off of our plate. There are some practical AI applications that can manifest in all sorts of ways, just depending on what your organization needs are and the BI or the business intelligence insight from the data that you need to collect. When we start looking at that BI data, we can employ artificial intelligence for everything from now mining social data to driving how we engage again in our customer relationships. How do we get that data then back into a CRM or an SRM or some other repository for optimizing logistics and efficiency when it comes to tracking and managing assets? So we're going to advance to the first step that we have of 5 in implementing a process or implementing at least the discussion for artificial intelligence within your community. According to PC Magazine, it encourages us all to become familiar with what modern AI can do. There are a wide array of resources. Stanford University is well known for the part that they play in this space, but there are also corporations that play in the artificial intelligence space. If you have not already gone online, there is a wealth of information online that tells us all about the basic concepts of AI so that you can either familiarize yourself or at least come as an intelligence point of view to the table when discussing how do we implement AI in our own processes. There are remote workshops, there are online courses. A known entity that does this and quite well is a company called Udacity. In many ways, it helps companies start with artificial intelligence and goes to increasing the knowledge areas on things like predictive analytics and things of such in your organization. Step 2 is identifying the problems that you want AI to solve. So once you're up to speed on the basics, then the next step for any business to do is to begin exploring different ideas. And these ideas could be unique to department. It could be unique to any sort of tailored group within a department. Think about how you can add AI capabilities to your existing products and services, and think about then what goals that you should flush out or bring to mind for specific uses where AI could solve a business problem. The other part of that is how then could it provide demonstrable value. Start with an overview of your key technology programs and problems, and then consider how natural language processing, image recognition, machine learning, and the like fit into those programs. There are specific ways always that are going to vary by industry. So, for example, if your company does video surveillance, they can capture a lot of value by adding machine learning to that process. One real-life example that I've experienced recently is I was traveling internationally, and I'm part of a frequent travel program with the TSA, a GOES traveler, that now I don't have to stand in line to go through customs any longer. I have my passport. I don't have to fill out the claimant of what I'm bringing back into the country. It knows from my passport photo, it knows from my fingerprints that when I step in front of that machine at the airport, it snaps a quick picture, it knows my frequent travel numbers, etc., and all I have to do is file that and my passport to the actual gate agent or ticket agent. It is a huge efficiency process that we go through when we're talking about transatlantic travel or transportation, when we've reduced the amount of customs officers that may be needed in order to clear a plane or multiple planes that are just coming into the busiest of airports. Another thing that you can think about is call centers. When we call call centers, or someone like our bank or someone like a customer service center, we are posed with the question of press 1 to do this, press 2 to do this, press 3 to do that. And sometimes it will say press O to receive an operator, which we can certainly do. In the olden days when there were rotary dials, it was really on voice recognition or someone physically answering the phone. So now we have that predictive and machine learning and that voice recognition to where if I'm calling to see what gate my flight is leaving from, it automatically challenges me. Arrival, departure. Today, another day. Are you leaving from Dallas, Texas, or are you arriving in Dallas, Texas? So all of that to say, it's let those agents who typically were on phone answering a myriad of questions to give a nice, simple, quick, and on-target answer to someone that's calling in and either using push buttons on the phone or some equally responsive answers through some yes-no questions or some really easy sorting questions. You may have asked either Pawana or myself, how is LexisNexis perhaps using artificial intelligence into our own space? Certainly fuzzy is a way that we can incorporate those into our tools so that if someone is looking for the word James Smith, we might think of James as Jim in a more casual setting. We might know Smith to be spelled with a Y instead of an I. And it seems really simplified, and yet it is when we turn that over to train the machine that when someone types in James, we also might mean Jim or Jimmy based on the machine learning the different patterns of searching for information. There's also a way that companies like LexisNexis can take high-volume tasks and automate those. There's a movie called Hidden Figures, if you're not familiar with that, when they're bringing the great big IBM computer into the organization with NASA. They haven't built a room with a door wide enough for the machine. And Octavia Spencer walks over, picks up the book, and she says, well, someone's going to have to learn how to push the buttons. So don't think about artificial intelligence as replacing, but replenishing what time we spent on mundane activities and where then our growth rate can be with the people who are mining and or considering any sort of risk where the machine might be at fault or need tweaking. So step 3, prioritize a concrete value. So we need to assess the potential business and financial value of all the various possibilities of artificial intelligence implementation that you as a company or organization has identified. It's really easy to get lost in the pie in the sky, magic wand question. So AI discussion should tie directly to the business value. Those initiatives should be in concert with one another. It's recommended by PC Magazine to prioritize and look for those dimensions and those potential and feasibility studies and put them simply into a matrix. It doesn't have to be anything complex. It could be a 2x2 matrix. This should help us prioritize based on either near-term visibility or knowing what the financial savings or value is for the company, for the organization. This lends us probably down the line to deeper discussions on outsourcing and the cost of training and the like with a human resource capacity. Now, for this step in prioritizing concrete value, we usually recommend, along with others in the industry, that we need to engage ownership. Sometimes that's managers, sometimes that's top-level executives, but in your matrix, it should include your shareholders and your stakeholders for the project itself. Step 4, acknowledge the internal capability gap. Wow. Consider that we might think that we have all the answers at any one time. Most organizations have a gap, and assessing that internal capability gap in this scenario is no different. There is a stark difference between what you want to accomplish and will you have the organizational ability to actually achieve given a certain time frame. This might be in the middle of a product migration. This might be is a phasing in or a phasing out of a process. It might be where someone has come in and talked to your organization about change management. And it could be something as simple as, we're going to file our expense reports this way now. Is there a training? Is there a ramp-up? Is there something that physically is going to change or be automated by the tool that the greater organization is investing in that our end users, even our internal customers, would need greater either responsibilities in grasping deadlines that are imposed and or things of that nature to effectively a process improvement that organization sees as positive for the organization. A business should know what it is capable of and not from a technological and a business process perspective. Let's all raise our right hands and say we will do this before launching into a full-blown AI implementation. Now, sometimes this takes a long time to do, and we look at things in some instances saying, why can't we do this immediately? Well, there's an opportunity with AI to change not only the innovation part of your business, but also the strategy part of that equation. And if you don't have a well-established process already, archaic as it may be, then it doesn't make sense to implement artificial intelligence for the company. So it is proposed to figure that your gap also includes the documentation of a process as it is done today. We often find that our customers have great tribal knowledge, for lack of a better term, in how we do things. And when we start to look at the human capital that's within an organization, HR departments are now weighing in to say 10% of our workforce could be retiring in the next 5 years. That part of our workforce is taking a lot of inherent knowledge with them, albeit efficient or not. So how do we get that knowledge passed through the generations of workforces that your own HR could weigh in on, if you will? When you start to look at that internal capability gap, it means identifying what you need to acquire and any processes that need to evolve before you actually can hit the ground running. So depending on your business, it may involve going out to a different department, whether that is legal, HR, supply management, and the like. There may be existing projects in the work. There also may be teams internally that can help grow this organically for certain business units. I know with our own company, we have, it's called Smart Hub for us, but we actually can go in and figure out if someone internally has been working on a Six Sigma project. We have someone that has gone back to grad school that's always held a certain process or a certain job within the company. So when we start to see what our own base of people can bring to our table, it might serve us well to close those gaps early in the process, given that we might have some internal resources available to us. All right, let's move to step 5. Step 5 is bring in the experts. So once your business is ready from an organizational and a technological standpoint, then it's time to start building and integrating. Now, the most important factors here are to start small, have project goals in mind, and most importantly, be aware of what you know and what you don't know about artificial intelligence. This is where bringing outside experts or AI consultants in could be invaluable. It could shrink the amount of time of adoption and certainly curtail the amount of time and value that the customer can recognize at the end or at the beginning of a project. You don't need a lot of time for the first project. There are experts in the industry and in the field that say you probably should start with a pilot project. That pilot project should run a healthy quarter or 2 to 3 months, depending on if you have cyclical needs within your company. Certainly we wouldn't want to launch a pilot program in the third month of a quarter if the third month of the quarter is the most busy for financial reporting. So think about when to launch a pilot program and when you could get a good cross-sampling of an estimated workflow, an estimated service level agreement, an estimated work and time that is invested in the natural process or the old way of doing business, so that we can certainly transpose a lot of those into numbers, creating value for the larger organization. You want to bring in some internal and some external people to serve on any sort of pilot project that you may have. And the recommendation is not for anywhere over than a half dozen, depending on the size of the project. We want to make certain that there's a tight time frame on pilots that we implement. We want to keep our teams focused, and we want to make certain that the goals are being met, but that also that those goals are straightforward. Now, after the pilot is completed, you should be able to decide as a small group what the longer-term goals should look like. You should come out of that with a more elaborate project that may have taken a life of its own during that pilot, but you also should be able to come out with a value proposition that makes sense for your business. It is really important to bring people in from both sides. We have to have the level of expertise of how a process works internally, maybe archaic or maybe even at the yellow or the black belt in the Six Sigma way of framework. But we also need the experts in this field to help us fill in what gaps we talked about in Step 4. The people who know about the business and the people who know about AI, it would be the best time to merge those into your pilot project team. If the team needs to grow beyond that to include stakeholders, shareholders, and the success of that model, then it certainly would be a time, at least at a high level, to have those folks go back and say, according to our experts, according to our consultants, according to our team, we found that we have a gap, and you might have to go back and start over and identify other gaps that weren't present at the onset of your journey. So those are the 5 steps that we recommend in the motion of getting started and implementing an artificial intelligence, machine learning, fuzzy name logic, etc., in how you help your business. So I'm going to go to some questions that would have been submitted online. There look to be 2 here. So, Pawana, these look like they might be addressed to you. One question is, what are the blind spots in context of risk? Are there any blind spots that maybe someone should look at, dependent not just on industry, but just as an overarching risk component?
Yeah. So one of the ways, and we're going to tie it back to how the tool is already helping, right, is so think about, you're doing business with IBM, and there are variations of it, right? You could say IBM, IBM Inc., IBM Corp. You could also say International Business Machines. You could type all of that as one word, but the way you're searching and you're saying, I just want to monitor for IBM, every time you're getting data for International Business Machines, you're missing it. So any of the compliance or regulatory data there you're looking for, any of the risk events you're looking for can be missed. And we have technologies, available within Nexis and outside, where you will get hundreds of variations of a company name based on where they are registered, where they do business. So you might say IBM North America, right? So you are going to look for data like that. That's just one example. There's also language variation. So you could have data coming out from a small regional authority, maybe that is naming a company or a person in the language variation that exists there locally, and you're not going to catch it because maybe your search or your tool language is set up to English or French or German. There's also another way where you could be looking at blind spots in terms of due diligence, right? It's not being able to link between the content type or a data type, not being to link that the person that exists here as so-and-so is also the person who could exist in a different document, but with a slight variation in the name. But a tool being able to know that and suggest to you that, hey, you want to look at this as well, not just the one that you typed. Those are the ways where you could, have blind spots currently, but you use the tools to augment and make sure that you are uncovering them.
Right. Hey, Pawana, there's a great question. I'm going to take just one out of order because it really dovetails in the question that we led with. We have a user, or at least an attendant today, that says, how are you using artificial intelligence in supply chain? So I'm going to start before Pawana maybe throws in her answer. In probably about 4 or so years ago, we found that the supply chain departments, at least that we work with, were quite immature in this space. We felt like that we had seen a lot of, I'm going to go check the credit score. It's a handshake agreement. We've always done business with them, and they're a great supplier. We have no troubles with delivering of goods and services and, paying of bills, so to speak. And we probably saw the global landscape of supply chain catch up with us faster than the supply chain organizations or anyone that was doing due diligence, frankly, faster than they were as a turnkey model. And so artificial intelligence, as we've seen that grow over the last handful of years, has been, Karen, I only have so many people. Supply chain is not, it's a line item in the budget. It's not a revenue stream. So where we had to approach that from a model of efficiency and value is how do we make the people in supply chain, whether it's a category manager or whatnot, more proficient so that they can get onto either performing due diligence on higher risk entities, performing monitoring on a tiered aspect of supply chain or of third parties. So part of that was filled in with the pain points of the variations in supply chain and supply management as they presented themselves to us. So as I tee this question up for Pawana's response, one of them is there's so much to look at. How do we know what to look at, and how can we get through that in a reasonable amount of time? Pawana, can I throw that to you now?
Yeah, definitely, and that's great, right? It's a real life, right, customer experience, and it happens, for a variety of them. The other way you could use supply chain is the good thing about it is we have so much data available now to either buy, consume, but it is up to the procurement professional or your supply chain analyst to say, what does this even mean? I have thousands and millions, sometimes of millions of records to go through. One of the ways you could use AI is to actually interpret that risk for you, to analyze it for you, right? So don't just think of it as something that gives you kind of data that you might not have gotten before, right? This is a way to interpret risk. It's a way to score risk. So you could even have a tool kind of go through the content that it found and say, based on all the content I scanned for you, and this happens, within milliseconds and seconds, only 10% of the data actually poses risk to your supply chain. Everything else is a medium or a low risk. And how does an algorithm or how does a machine actually classify data into high risk, medium risk, low risk? That way it is up to you, and that way it helps you actually decide, I'm going to focus just on high risk today. Or you could build processes around your company, your business process, to say whenever something is classified as a high risk, I'm going to have an escalation process built in, or I'm going to have a process where I'm going to look at and analyze the data even further. Everything else can be just archived until I go and call for it. So there are various ways of using artificial intelligence. Yeah.
Right. Pawana, we've got another question. I think it might be a two-part answer as well, so let me read the question. What impact do you think that artificial intelligence will have on jobs over the next 5 years and 10? I would see where I've seen the change, at least in different industry groups like ISM or others in that parity. There are now more universities offering this as a course of study than any time in our past. In not so recent past, we would go to school, we would get maybe our master's in business, and now we have well-renowned universities that are offering not only undergraduate degrees in this space, but also graduate degrees and thesis statements being written on the productivity of the organization, so that it does bring back that soft cost to the organization's bottom line. I think that's where I see it on this side of the equation of what's happening probably in the next 5 years. I would say in the next 10, there will probably a complete redefinition of what commodity managers may be turning into industry analysts, so to speak. I think it is up in the air with regard to the processes that we do have in place today and how that artificial intelligence does call for a more technological or a more AI speak, either certification and or experience. Tawana, do you have anything from yours? You came from a technical background and a product development side in this space. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's morphing, right? And the way I see, just in the last few years, this rapid innovation happening, right? Every company in a technological or even non-technological space are having this, the Center for Excellence, this let's figure out what's next in technology. How do we get ahead, right? As one of your business motivators to explore. The way I see for the personal job, so you as an employee, is I actually think machine learning, these tools called artificial intelligence, actually empowers you to do your job better. The data visibility that it provides, right, how you're able to see and interpret data, how you're able to communicate with authority, right, with facts, the decisions that you make within your job, and how you communicate that back to your stakeholders. And if I'm just thinking from a procurement professional, if I had visibility into all of the risk within the third parties that I'm managing for my stakeholders, and if I could tell them and pinpoint them into exactly where the risk lived and what does that mean in comparison to others, right, that makes me a much more powerful person within my role than I would have done previously. So I feel like it empowers you to do your job better. It helps you make data-based decisions and not just, your hunch. And also I feel like in the long term, there is going to be an evolution of more and more job titles being created because there is a need for this tool to be implemented. There is a tool for a human to actually understand this because, again, the machine does not run by itself. You have to teach it what to do. So there will be different kind of roles created within the organization.
Great, Tawana. We've got another one here, and I'm going to put a little framework around it. We've got an attendee today that says, does AI, like Alexa, listen to our passive conversations and not instructions and records of data? Should it be of concern? I'm going to turn that a little bit about what I know Tawana and I see in the marketplace with regard to any kind of noise. It doesn't matter if it's Alexa or if we are casting a search against Google or something as interpretive as what we think our sophistication is and the tools that we offer. There's always that chance for noise. Point in case, if I'm looking for a company named Adobe, then I certainly don't want to cast a net against the World Wide Web or any other services that is using Adobe in the context in which I'm not looking for, like a print ad or something of that nature. So I think there's always a learning curve for the machine to get smarter as it goes, but maybe instead of an AI question, Tawana, could you address maybe how the machine and how long it takes maybe for something like that for the machine to learn how to search better, how the machine can incorporate and weed out those passive conversations and really go for those that are more instructional and or pertinent to the user?
And I think that's around, your intent, right? There was a piece where we talked about what is the user intending to do with this information? What is the intent behind the question, right? So understanding that is the key piece of it. And the second part of that, the equation is you could have a lot of the noise that comes up as more of a distraction, right? You are spending more time saying no, no, no to all the answers given to you versus actually diving and making decisions based on what you actually looked for. So there are ways where the machine learns to discard because at the end of it, all of these tools are there to first provide speed, right? And it does not provide you speed if you have to shift through hundreds of irrelevant documents or data points. So it is one of the bread and butter for the tools to make sure that it actually understands the user relevancy, what it means to you versus what it means to Karen, right, depending on the context you're searching for. And I think over time, the tools that will really succeed are the ones that can understand that user's voice better and surface the results better.
Juana, I'm going to do a time check. We've got 5 minutes left and 3 questions to go, so we're going to keep up the pace. There is a question that came in, and maybe all of us have this question on our minds. How do I trust what the machine is telling me?
And I think that's a very good question because, with every new technology being introduced and this concern for loss of privacy, right, being felt like you're being watched and everything is being recorded all the time, and do I trust this or not? Is there fake news or is this real news? And sometimes it's a leap of faith, right, with any technology, right? For the first time, think of the flight, right? Who thought a big machine could fly like that, right? And I'm getting ready to board an Airbus 380, right? I never thought I would fly in such a big airplane and it would stay in the sky. So sometimes it does take a leap of faith. But there are other things that you could do, right, to just get to trusting stage. One is the machines can be wrong if you feed it a faulty data point, right? So it is not smart enough to know or validate the truth. So there is always this human intervention piece of it where you make sure that the data that the machine is making decisions based off is actually something you trust. And based on that, if you analyze based on the wrong content, you're going to get to the wrong conclusion, right? But if your data set is clean and you trust that data, the machine is programmed to make, the decisions. You can always QA. There's always, when you're building a technology, right, there's always people QAing. There's also a machine QAing piece of it. But there's always a human looking at to say, does it make business sense? Does it make logical sense? And then the third one is that there are always proof of concepts. So you can use this machine, and when Karen outlined those 5 steps, right, there is a proof of concept you do with a simple task, a smaller task, or maybe one critical task. You get your validated results at the end of it. And if you feel like it did not give you what you're looking for, you can go ahead and refine your algorithm. You can define your data sets better. You can consume more. You can consume less. So there is always this option to go back and reconfigure what you did not like. So there is always rooms where you're constantly checking the machine and improving and in a way making it think and behave more like how you would have behaved. So I think it's not something that gets implemented, everything is in the black box and you have no visibility into what it's doing. It is open. It is always open for configuration and change, and just take leap of faith and trust that it works. If it doesn't work, you will see it in the results and you can re-implement.
Okay, Pawana, I think one last question before we get to your closing remarks, and it is a good one. Is AI somehow implemented in the electronic marketplace platform? I would say as Pawana forms her final thoughts and answers to this question, we see a lot of integration questions coming our way. How can we take and link companies and individuals and locations and map those into our own SRMs in that space? When there are especially multiple third parties where transactions are being processed in the marketplace, there is a need to streamline some of that, to find contingency suppliers, and that integration component must be well thought out. Pawana, I'm going to let you have final words either on this question, but also pulling up our contact information as you close out our session today with great thanks from me.
All right. Thank you, Karen. I know we didn't get to all of your questions. If you want to email us your questions, we are happy to respond to you after the call. And as just a thank you for your participation today, we would like to offer you a 20% discount on one of our risk monitoring solutions. Should you have any questions and if you want more information, you can contact either Karen or me. You will see the email address on the screen now. And thank you very much for joining us today.
All right. Thank you so much, Pawana and Karen. We're going to go ahead and close out our meeting. On behalf of Institute for Supply Management and LexisNexis, I would like to thank you for your participation in today's event. This concludes today's program. Thank you, and have a great day.